So I've been showing these covers in a few videos. I've made these to look vintage and sort of leathery. And I thought, I've just bought a new sketchbook. I'm going to use this secondhand novel to sketch in, to sketch faces. And I thought this cover isn't great. I don't like the feel of it. So I'm going to make one of these again, and I'm going to take you with me and show you how I do this. So I've been talking about it in other videos and explaining, but now I'm going to show you. Oops. So what you need is glue, cheap glue. I mean, this doesn't need to be anything special because you're just going to glue really thin paper. I don't know what this is called in English. In Swedish we call it silk paper, I think. So I have this because I got it from an old school that they closed down, so I haven't bought it. And I wouldn't buy it if I didn't have it. You know, it would feel like something I don't need. But as I've got it, why not use it? And I do recommend wearing gloves, but I'm not gonna, because I'm too lazy to go downstairs and get new ones, because I had a stash up here, but it's gone because I use glue so much. Okay, so this is the first layer. I'm using a this kind of pale yellow color. And I don't try too hard to make it wrinkle free, because the final layer I want to have wrinkles because it adds to the interest. I do, however, try to really get into the crease here. This is a spine, the crease in the spine. There. And somehow, I mean, I do want to fold this over the inside of the cover so that it really covers the whole, so it doesn't end here and you see the brown of the original cover. We don't want that. So best way to avoid it, I think, is to fold it over so that the inside becomes part of it, part of the I should have cut this before, but I didn't. Okay. It is messy. Just be prepared for that, because I mean you're using glue, so glue and very thin paper that rips. There we go. And I think, I mean, I don't think it's super important what it looks like on the inside of the cover, because you can glue these pages onto there or cover it up with some other kind of paper. So, you know, I'm not trying to make it pretty, as it were. Now, I don't want to, I was going to put the book upside down, but I have fabric underneath, so I realized that wasn't a good idea. Just using my fingers to spread the glue into the crease and just, you know, wipe it down. Oops, that doesn't matter, because we're going to make several layers, so it doesn't matter what happens with the first layer, really. You can rip it. What doesn't work, though, is to use cut up pieces like a whatchamacallit, what's it called when you have several small pieces and like a collage. I'm looking for another word. Patchwork. That doesn't work. Despite the name, it doesn't work because it you want, or I want, to have quite like the same color all over the cover. And if you use patchwork, it tends to, well, it becomes a patchwork with and the color looks different depending on how many, you know, pieces and how they overlap. It's not great. So I do recommend having big pieces of this crinkly silk paper, so that it's kind of the same all round. Oh my god, it's ripping. And like here, I wouldn't fold it over to the other side again, because when the paper is doubled, you know, it becomes another color, because you can't, when you add another layer, you can't see as much of the original color through the paper. So if that, you know, if you have some places where there are 2 layers and others there's only 1, it looks different, and you don't want that. So one problem here is to really push this down into the inside of the spine, because there's a hole here, a gap, and you want the paper to go into that gap so that it looks like the book was made that way. So there's not a, you know, somewhere where you can see the original color of the book. You want to avoid that, so try to just push it down everywhere. Everywhere you can see the original cover, you want to, you know, put your own paper. Second layer, and I'm going to use the same color again. I have a few different colors, or nuance, no, shades is the right word, I think, that I'm going to use, but I'm going to start with these yellow ones. And as you can see, it's very thin, so no matter how many layers you add, you will probably see the text here, Catherine Cookson. So I might have to cover that up with some lace perhaps, or paint over it, because the final layer I will paint it with acrylics to get a, well, to polish it, to get that final effect that I'm going for, because yeah, to get the vintage look, I think you need to paint it. And you can probably use ink as well, like for example distress inks perhaps. Whoops, little accident there. Try to repair it. There we go. I'm really not loving this fabric I'm on, so I'm gonna put this book here instead, so I can so I don't have to, you know, fold the book open, this book, just because of the fabric. So now here we have some air bubbles, which means there's not enough glue, I think. But I also think that you can make the glue go through the paper, because I can feel it, even though I've put on a layer, I can feel glue coming through that layer. So that should work the other way around as well. There. And I want to say something about the color of the original book, because it depends, of course, what the book looks like to begin with. You know, the result depends on the original color. So if you have a really like weird color, like apple green or something, and you want it to be, well, this warm brown color in the end, maybe you might start by gluing a white piece of paper onto the book, just to neutralize it, because no matter how many layers you add, it seems the original color shines through. You do mitigate some of this by painting with acrylics, but I'm not sure you can sort of get at I'm not sure you can solve the whole problem just with acrylics. So you have to think through what color you use, what color book you use, and how to, you know, not get in trouble. Because as you can see now, because this is white, this is a very different color, the yellow color, than the cover, which is brown underneath. So if I had glued white paper onto the cover, this is what it would have looked like when I added this paper. Which would also have been fine. It would look like a sort of Easter book, I think. Really, really yellow. I don't really know how many layers to add. I don't know how many you need, because I've just started doing this and I'm not an expert. I'm just showing you how I do it, how it seems to work for me. I'm just, all of these little pieces stick to my fingers. That's why I'm off camera all the time, to try to remove them and put them in the rubbish bin. Okay, let's use a different color now, sort of more orange. And I mean, you use up a lot of glue, so that's why I recommend using cheap glue, because like it doesn't have to oh, maybe not that much. Let's see. This is getting really messy, but that's how I like it. That's why I like a project like this, because it gets my hands really dirty, and apparently I like that. So what was I saying? I have no idea. But now we're adding a different color to sort of, I think perhaps that makes the final color of the finished book becomes more like three-dimensional if you use different color paper in the different layers, because you can sort of see through the layers and to what's underneath, and there are different hues. So I haven't tried to do it another way, but my sort of intuition tells me that this is a good way of doing it. Just gonna remove the excess here. Oops, don't cut your fingers. Tip of the day. Let's fold this over as well. I don't think I'm gonna fold all the layers over, but I do think that this one needs to be folded over because it's orange, so I don't only have like a yellow hue along the sides of the book. I want this orange hue as well. But maybe this is the final layer I will fold over, because this is not going to be seen. I'm going to glue something on top of it, either a page from the book or some kind of design paper perhaps. No, not design paper, because I don't really use them. I don't have a lot of design paper. It doesn't really inspire me, but the equivalent of designer paper. Which for me is pages from books, wrapping paper, things like that. Just patterns that I like. Let's see. Oh, it's already stuck to the inside cover here. There we go. And if this fold over, it doesn't really do the trick. If you know, when you've made all your layers, maybe you think, oh, it's too thin. If you haven't folded over all the layers and you feel it's too thin along the sides, you can always use paint to, well, repair it, I guess. And add some color. Look, this, I can't get rid of it. I don't know. Is there a trick to this? And it wouldn't be any better with gloves, because, you know, it would stick to them instead. All right, so we have 3 layers. 2 layers of yellow paper and 1 layer of orange paper. So I could leave it like that, actually. Let's compare it to this finished one. It's a completely different color, but I've used copper acrylics and sienna and umber to paint it, so it might actually, I don't know, maybe it's not warm enough yet. So I'm going to try a darker, this is a darker hue of orange. I'm gonna make 1 layer with that, and then perhaps also add another layer of yellow. And that might be the final layer that I put on my book. But it's not, this is not a rule, like you don't have to make, what is it, 5 layers. It's just what I feel like doing with this particular book. I think it depends what's underneath, what you're going for. This is just one way of doing it. So this will be very orange, and that's why I don't want to make that the final layer. I do think it needs some, I don't know, warmth or cheeriness with the yellow as a final touch. And now, as you can see, I'm starting to get these creases, and I think I'm going to keep them because the final layers should be a bit creased. That's what makes them look alive, like this. and when you paint them, the paint tends to stay or catch in the cracks and the wrinkles, so you get patterns from the paint. Oops. Again, it drips really easily, so be careful. So now here we got two different hues, as you can see, because I ripped the paper, and it's well, it's double here. The orange paper is folded over, and here there's nothing, so we only see what's underneath. So we'll get two different hues there, and I'm going to decide that that's okay, but I wouldn't want it all over the whole book. Oops, another accident. Let's just remove some excess now. I think it's because when your fingers start to dry, when you have half dried glue on your fingers, that's when you sort of stick to the paper and it comes off together with, it's like your half dried fingers brings the paper with them. So if you want to be sure that that doesn't happen, perhaps you should be wet. Because when I have wet glue on my fingers, it doesn't happen. Or perhaps it can happen, but it's not as the risk isn't as high, I guess. So there we go. I'm gonna fold it into the gap here again. So I'm gonna pull it a bit more open and put some glue specifically in the gap. There, and maybe here as well. Just putting the glue on my fingers now to distribute it where it's most needed. And I try to everywhere the paper sort of sticks out and there are pieces of it that doesn't really stick, you add a lot of glue. So don't be afraid to use a lot, because this paper is so erratic. You have to sort of use some force and a lot of glue to really get it to stick to the places you want it to stick to. Oops. Oh no. Okay, so the spine ripped a little. That's not good news. We want the spine intact, book intact. Okay. Be careful. Okay, so final layer will be the yellow paper again, and I'm gonna add more glue. And this time, since this is the final layer, I'm really going to try to get those creases, like beautiful creases. Try to make them interesting. So I'm sort of trying not to smooth it out too much. and in places it can even like fold in on itself, like a crease is like paper that folds over and then back again. Like, yeah, it's not easy, because, you know, when you smooth your fingers over it, the paper tries to go with you. It's very enamored with gluey hands. But I think this might work. And now I'm not going to rip off the excess. I'm going to keep it there and either fold it over and glue it to the inside of the cover when the book is dry, or rip it off then. I don't really have a reason for doing it that way. I just feel like that's a good idea. Yeah, so don't ask, basically. And as you may see, by putting this light yellow color as the outer layer, we don't get, I mean, we sort of, the orange is not as bright on the end, you know, the final layer, because we get this yellow paper to tone it down. Here we have a crease where it's really folded over itself, but I didn't really like that. One sort of problem with this method is that if you don't, say that you do this and you use colors that resemble human skin in any way. Now we don't know yet what color this will be when it dries, because it gets a bit lighter, I guess. But the first time I did this, the end result looked a bit morbid. Like my husband said, it looks like it's made out of human skin. And that's not the effect we're going for. Or perhaps it is if you're making something really, like, I don't know. I won't judge, but if you don't want it to look like it's bound in human skin and, you know, it's like something out of, what's it called? The Hannibal book. That's why we do the final layer of paint, because then we can sort of darken it down in places to make it look leathery instead. Because it's much better to bind something in animal skin. I was sarcastic there, by the way. Anyway, with acrylics as the final layer, we get to sort of control what the end product looks like. And if it looks like something we don't want to think about in any way, we can sort of repair that. I'm just gonna push it down into the gap again and try to repair this rip in the spine that I made. Okay. So, final layer in place. Am I satisfied with this look? And of course, you get glue everywhere. Like, there's glue now on these pages, but I think it's just on the edges, so you'll be able to, or I'll be able to open the pages anyway. They might stick a little, but not all over the page, so it should be fine. So as I said, I'm not folding these over yet because I don't know exactly how I want to do the inside cover. So instead, I'm just going to leave this to dry, standing like this. I'm just going to check one final time if I'm happy with how the creases have turned out, because this is my final chance to control that. And there are still air bubbles, which, you know, that might make for an interesting effect. Sometimes the paper sort of is if it's a bit loose, it doesn't stick completely to the cover. That can look interesting. But if you don't want that, you should go over it one final time to make it look nice. I like this. Yeah, I think. Just checking it against the light to see. Well, there are a few vertical lines I'm not crazy about, like it's too regular. But I don't know if I can do anything about that right now. Maybe it's too late. I'm sort of trying to make it less regular. I don't know. Maybe it's fine. It's fine. If it's not fine, I can glue a picture on the front. Oh, look at that. Great. Now it's starting to dry, so it's really ready for ripping. You know what? I'm gonna call it quits. If I'm not happy with the result, I can always add another layer of this silk paper. But I'm gonna leave it to dry now, and then I'll be back to do the final touches with acrylics. And now this has come loose. The fold over has come loose, so I'm just repairing that. Oh, it was the fold over I didn't do. That's why it was loose. Idiot. Well, never mind. Okay, so I want as little as possible of the gluey bits to stick to something. So this is the best I can do, I think. Like, it may stick to the book underneath and rip a little once it's dry, but I don't think so, because this book is kind of plasticky, so it might be fine. If you want to be sure, you could use something plastic to stand it on. And now I'm I'm a bit paranoid about leaving this, because, you know, what if it's not fine? There are lots of air bubbles. Well, we'll see. The back is better, actually. What you could do, I suppose, is to use a needle to poke holes in the air bubbles, if it's hard to remove them in other ways. But I don't really feel like doing that, so yeah, no, I'm going to leave it and let it dry, and then just paint over the whole thing. Right, now the book has dried, and so the first step is to remove the excess paper on the inside of the cover. So I'm just using a pair of scissors to sort of cut it off with the tip, and I rip it. It's like, you know, just remove it. Later I'm going to glue the first page of the book onto the inside of the cover, so it doesn't really matter what it looks like, if it's uneven edges and stuff. And once that's done, the next step is to paint the outside of the book, the cover. And I'm going to use acrylics, as I said. I use umber and copper for this one. I don't think I used anything else, actually. So I'm starting with the umber. I'm just using my fingers to paint the creases mainly. And then I just smudge it out with a piece of paper, and I also use I spray water on the cover to dilute the color and make it easier to move around. And as I go over the whole cover with the paper and sort of, spread it out and smudge it into the cracks, as it were, it catches in certain places and stays there, and in other places I just wipe it off, so it becomes kind of, it's a dynamic process, so I don't really choose where the color goes. I just go over the whole thing, and it chooses where to go, basically, and that makes it look natural, I think, like it's happened over the years, like it's a what do you call it when something patina, I guess. And I won't lie, I wasn't sure when I started painting if I really wanted to darken the cover, because I liked that it was this kind of this ochre color that I really liked, and it would have been beautiful like that as well, but I don't know. I wanted to show you how I did this. So I guess I just sort of went ahead. And I can make more covers because I still have that paper. But I think the original cover of the book, which is dark brown, really shines through in some places. And in other places, the paper it hasn't really stuck to the cover. So it gets this natural kind of difference in hues, and I guess I'm adding another layer of that by painting it, so it I what more to say. I'm struggling to learn this concept, like that layers add to the look of something, that just one layer of paint doesn't do the trick. And I'm so enamored of each layer that I want to stop and keep it that way because it looks good to me. But then I think that adding more makes it more three-dimensional and adds interest. And so I'm trying to be brave, I guess, is what I'm saying. It's a bit like a piece of music, how it's arranged. There may be instruments that you don't really hear what they're doing. They have beautiful melodies or just chords somewhere in the mix, and you don't really hear it, but it adds to the final product. And when you hear those, like when you separate them from the rest of the music, it can feel like, oh, but this is beautiful on its own. And it is, it may be, but in the context of the song, it makes sense to make it a part of the background. And I think this is kind of the same thing. And as I said, and as you can probably see, most of the paint I just wipe off again. But it does make the whole, like, it darkens the whole surface, but it doesn't look painted. It just sort of fills in the tiny not holes, but like irregularities in the paper. So it gets this sort of grainy look because it's not a flat surface and sort of plasticky finish. Instead, it looks really organic, I guess. And now it's time to fix the inside of the cover. So I start by peeling off bits and pieces that stick out. And then I take a glue stick to the first page of the book and glue it down onto the inside cover. And the first 2 pages are glued together, like they stick together close to the spine. So I actually glue both of those pages down because I just think it's irritating, to be honest. So press down so it really sticks. And of course, as I said, you can use design paper or craft paper or some other, like a picture from a book or something to cover the inside covers. And perhaps I'll do that, but I wanted a finished look, so this was kind of the first step to achieve that. So there we have it, a finished product. You can, of course, embellish the cover more than this. You can put, like, for example, a painted doily on top. You can make a book plate of some kind, maybe something to back this, like, well, now I have nothing, but say that we use something a bit darker. Wait, you know, you build up something. Let's say that this is a piece of fabric, and you just mount it onto something like this, and you put your name or something, or sketchbook here, or you could fussy cut something and put it on the cover. Fussy cut is better than this because these white edges look bad. You can put something like this, I mean just this piece, to make it look like something old, you know, old book, facsimile, I don't know how to say that. Or maybe if you want like an Edith Holden type of cover, you can add, I don't know, but you know, possibilities are endless. You can also go over it with more paint, maybe some gold along the edges. I'm not sure if I'm going to do that. I've done it with other books, and it can get a bit much. This is too much. I have to darken this down. Yeah, but yeah, I'm kind of pleased with how it turned out, and now I'm going to use it for my sketches. And if something, I mean, I do want to say, if you sketch this, you don't have to be afraid of using up paper when it's a second-hand book like this. So you could, for example, just draw mouths for 50 pages just to practice drawing mouths. And it's fine because you're not using up an expensive new sketchbook. It's just this old book that no one's gonna read because you're destroying it, basically. But yeah, I think this is a good idea.